Hello and welcome to another standard video here on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at a green-white Overlord deck that's designed to get a lot of value out of the new Overlords from Duskmourn. There's Up the Beanstalk, for instance, a 2-mana enchantment that will immediately draw a card, and now whenever we cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, we draw a card. And this also counts if we impend the Overlords, so normally we would cast it for 5 mana to get a 6/5, which makes an everywhere tapped land token when it enters or attacks, but we can also impend the green Overlord for just 1 and double green, so we can now curve Up the Beanstalk turn 2, turn 3 Overlord, and then immediately start ramping, and we also get to immediately draw an extra card, since we're technically still casting a 5 mana spell, and the same applies to the white Overlord for 4 mana if we impend it, making a pair of 2/1 flying insect tokens, and then of course if we cast it for 7, it's also going to be very powerful. So those are the 2 Overlords. Then we also have the Outcaster Trailblazer, which we can potentially plot on turn 3, allowing us to cast it turn 4, make an extra mana, and then we can immediately cast the green Overlord for 5 mana, not only getting an everywhere token, but also drawing a card since we're playing a creature with power 4 or greater, so that's also quite nice. And then we also have the interaction with Overlords and Scroll Shift, which allows us to maybe impend the Overlords, and then on the following turn we can Scroll Shift, exiling them and then returning them into play in the form of the actual creature, so we can immediately re-trigger their ETB effect, and then we can also maybe start attacking with them on the following turn, or if we maybe Scroll Shift during the opponent's turn, set up a nice ambush, and then immediately start attacking on the following turn already. And then the final card to synergize with the Overlords is Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, which allows us to trigger the Overlords twice if we impend them or if we cast them, and then it can also draw us additional cards with Up the Beanstalk and the Outcaster Trailblazer, so that also allows us to draw a lot of extra cards, while also shutting down all of the opponent's ETB effects, so that can also be quite powerful in certain matchups. And then rounding out the deck, we do need some cheap interaction to try and survive all the aggro decks in the best of 1 ladder especially, and Elspeth's Smite and Not On My Watch are perfect for that, exiling attacking creatures, so we don't take any damage from Heartfire Hero or Cacophony Scam, for instance. Get Lost, more instant speed removal, can also maybe target the opponent's leyline. And then Pick Your Poison, also kind of a card I'm trying out in green decks now, as a 1 mana answer to an opposing leyline. Can also make the opponent sacrifice a Slick Shot out of the red decks, and then there's plenty of other artifacts, enchantments, and flying creatures running around. Even against the tokens deck, you can maybe get rid of a Caretaker's Talent. Against the Oculus deck, you can get rid of an Oculus or a Haughty Djinn, same with the mono-blue matchups. So I've found Pick Your Poison to be pretty effective. Against mono-black, there's the Deep Cavern Bat as well, so again, no shortage of potential targets. And then it's a cheap spell we can also cast after maybe playing a Trailblazer with that floating mana, so that can also come in handy. And then the mana base is very streamlined, lots of untapped lands, so we can cast an early Smite if needed. And then we also get to play with a new Hushwood Verge, another dual land that's perfect for this type of strategy. Portico lets us surveil, so can maybe play tapped if we don't have anything else going on to sculpt our next couple draw steps. And then I also don't mind 2 copies of A Restless Prairie, even though it enters tapped, it can be nice in the grindier matchups, especially good with a white Overlord. Once we start making lots of tokens, can pump those up to deal a lot of extra damage. And then Cavern of Souls can also be very useful against counter spells, as we can make our avatars uncounterable. Occasionally can also use it for Elishnorn or the Trailblazers. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand seems keepable. Got our anti-aggro cards, but we're also prepared to play a grindier game. Opponent maybe a red-white tokens deck. So not the best matchup for Not On My Watch, as we see a Carrot Cake coming out. Yeah, can maybe get the Overlord going for now. An alternative play was plotting Trailblazer, so next turn I could actually cast the 5-mana Overlord, as our opponent gets the Urbrask's Forge going. Scroll Shift is fun with Overlord too. Maybe want to Scroll Shift the white Overlord instead. And then for now just impend it. Although we do have to watch out for their various sweepers as well. So maybe we get more value out of the green Overlord for now. Can just cast Trailblazer and then cast Scroll Shift with the floating mana. And then I can get to 7 mana to just hard cast as well. Alright. Not a bad turn. Opponent does have the Caretaker's Talent, but yeah, we can just block here and accumulate more value. Opponent's not even gonna bother. Maybe if they had an untapped land, they could have kept the Forge token with a level 2 of Talent. Alright, so I've got a pretty good turn lined up. Casting Overlord is a bit risky in the face of Sunfall, admittedly, even though it would still draw me a card. Might end up just impending it instead. Or we just cast Overlord, hope they don't have Sunfall. It's a close decision. The fact that we get a replacement card makes me feel less bad about a potential board wipe. And if they don't have it, we potentially close out the game right away. And then we have a follow-up Overlord. So cross our fingers for no Sunfall. Opponent sacking Carrot Cake, so they don't have it. Or maybe just missing the line for it. So next turn they could still have it. For now, Helix the Trailblazer. Yeah, their token from Sunfall is going to be pretty big. But we're still going to get in there. Opponent takes 10. And then do I need to consider casting Split Up just to mitigate the token from Sunfall? I don't really get to develop my board this turn, unless we want to impend a green Overlord, for instance. Maybe we'll see what's on top. Up the Beanstalk now, that's a good one. Definitely a reason to hang on to my more expensive spells. Do I split up all untapped creatures, so their token's only a 4/4? I guess I could make it a 5/5 by attacking with Forge first. Nah, I think we just hope they don't have it, but I have to imagine they do. So yeah, opponent goes to second main so they can attack first. So I'm definitely blocking if they attack. Wow, opponent explodes. I guess they did not have the Sunfall after all, so glad I didn't do anything too crazy. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with keepable hands. I've got our early removal for aggro matchups. And then in the grindier matchups, Overlord and Trailblazer are pretty good. Opponent with Fabled Passage. And another Overlord. I think I keep. So not sure if Pick Your Poison will be all that useful in this matchup, but most decks have either flying creatures or enchantments. As we see Deep Cavern Bats, which we can also remove for just 1 mana. They did get to see our hands, which will maybe help them play around Smite and Not on My Watch. And we can assume maybe a black-white bat deck. So the 2/1 flyers from Overlord will come in handy. Opponent takes Smite. They can sack a flying creature. Yeah, I think their sequencing makes sense, because now we wouldn't be able to necessarily play Trailblazer and Pick Your Poison in the same turn, whereas had they taken Pick Your Poison and then we get to Smite this turn, we can maybe make that play as our opponent plays Zorlin. So may as well plot the Trailblazer since I don't care too much about the attack. Yeah, Zorlin's maybe not going to attack if we keep up mana, so it's kind of a tricky spot actually. Going for the Overlord gives me 5 mana next turn, still doesn't necessarily unlock anything too spectacular. So, could also just pass with removal available, even though I'm not progressing my own game plan as much. Just to want Zorlin to get out of hand. And then next turn I can maybe plot a Trailblazer and keep up Smite. So the black-white bats could have ways to grow their creatures. They could also have Aclazots, which is a 4/4, but I think I still use Not on My Watch here and keep the cheaper Smite, since then next turn I can play 3-drop and keep up Smite for 1 mana. So they can get back the bats. And we'll see what they take. Now the good news is we're still at 20. Next turn I could also use Overlord to make some 2/1s. So opponent does take the Smite. Alright, so I think I'm happy enough using the Overlord here, and then next turn we can cast a 5-mana Overlord as well. Opponent makes a Knight. So with the Virtue of Loyalty they can potentially go over the top and grow their creatures a bunch. Elishnorn seems decent in this matchup, as it can shut down future copies of Deep Cavern Bat. For now, I think we can take the hit from the Knight since we have Overlord coming in to block it, although they could also remove the Overlord. So then I maybe fine trading. If they have another Zorlin, double blocking Zorlin could be a reason to take it here as well. So I'll take the hit for now. Right, Loran can destroy our enchantment, sadly. Could have also blown up the 5-mana Overlord, and now a double Trailblazer could be nice to chain together. So maybe we'll do that instead of the Overlord, and then next turn we maybe get to draw 2 cards. Okay. Pass a turn. Would love to find Elishnorn. Any of our Overlords are good as a Loran and the Knight attack. Now we could maybe set up some trades before the Virtue comes down. If they have an Edict effect, it's most likely Shieldred's Edict, which doesn't matter if we have the tokens left. They could also have their own Smite. But nope, trades happen. And alright, opponent actually has an Edict in the form of Liliana of the Veil. So Trailblazer down, although Trailblazer can also attack Liliana, and we drew another one. So, seems like a good starting point. Maybe cast Overlord in case they did have a Smite they were sandbagging. Surveil. And another Overlord seems fine. Opponent jumps. We'll discard planes if they plus.
Drop it.
Lockdown not looking too great in this matchup, but that's definitely respecting the red aggro decks. So yeah, this might not be an actual bad life gain deck, but more of black-white mid-range with Zoralin, which I've seen be pretty effective too. But we're happy playing this type of matchup with all our value engines. So play Trailblazer, play Overlord, draw a million cards. And our opponent has seen enough. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand seems keepable. We've got tools against aggro, but we can also play a longer game. Portico just needs to find a land. Opponent on turn 1 plains. Yeah, I'll use a Surveil land here. Another green Overlord. May not be super needed. Finding an up the beanstalk turn 2 would be ideal. And our opponent tokens deck. Alright, so we gotta strap in for a longer game. I think I'm fine using Smite, so they don't have a token left over for Caretaker's Talent purposes. Gonna be an Evangelist, would have been better to exile, admittedly. Could just destroy that now with Split Up, or we could plot Trailblazer, and then next turn go Trailblazer into Overlord. Seems better. Opponent is a red-white after all. And another Evangelist, alright, opponent means business. There's the Beanstalk, a little bit late to the party, I think. Unless we want to go Beanstalk, Trailblazer, and then Impend Overlord would still draw. But I can also just draw if I cast Overlord with Trailblazer out. So, that seems better to me. And then we're getting close to casting the 7-mana Overlord, which can also maybe stabilize us. Looks like maybe a Helix or a Soul Partition on Trailblazer. And maybe another one on Overlord then. Get lost. Alright, so now split up tapped creatures is probably necessary. Otherwise we are just gonna die next turn. And we're still in trouble since there's some leftover bats. So destroy tapped creatures, and then I can still impend an Overlord. Next turn I can cast another Overlord regardless. So do we prefer extra mana, or probably extra card draw from Beanstalk? Could also maybe draw a Smite and still cast it here. Alright, if they have a Helix, we're dead. So far, so good. So cast Overlord, and then we're technically still alive. And now Pick Your Poison could also be an answer to a flying creature. Although in this matchup we're often better off destroying enchantments. And Sunfall wipes the board. Alright, that's acceptable. At least we're not dead. Can make them sacrifice an artifact if I really want to. What's our alternative option? If I play Trailblazer, could have 4 mana left over. Not quite enough for the Overlord. So maybe we go Beanstalk. Draw. Find a Smite. And then I kind of like just casting Overlord, and then I can still Pick Your Poison. Even though playing Trailblazer first would draw more cards, but at this point with double Beanstalk I'm not too concerned. So now we're not dead to removal plus animate your token. If they're running Helix, we could still be on a ticking time bomb. Archangel Elspeth, also dangerous.
We can save everyone.
If they can jump one of their creatures. But we do have Smite and more flying creatures coming up. And how about an Elishnorn? Okay. So, step 1, I imagine, attack Elspeth, opponent's gonna chump, and then just casting Overlord seems reasonable. Trailblazer first could let me impend the Overlord, which is also an option, maybe less all-in in the face of another board wipe. But if we are worried about closing out the game in time, just casting the Overlord might not be a bad way to do it. Could also cast Elishnorn, to be fair. So we do have some options. Yeah, I could maybe die to an Orbrask's Forge if they attack with a token. I guess they wouldn't be able to give it flying before it gets a chance to attack. So that still works. Yeah, close call. I kind of like Elishnorn. Draw 2, Elishnorn enters, draws more cards. And now it seems safer to keep up Smite. And then casting Overlord with Elishnorn in place, pretty awesome. Can also stop cards like Carrot Cake from making tokens. Opponent passes, so we can go after Elspeth. And maybe cast another Overlord here. 33 cards remain. Not too worried about decking, so can play another Beanstalk first as well. Draw 2 cards thanks to Elishnorn. Yeah, I'll start by attacking, see what their response is. Damage happens. Elspeth down. So do we feel another Sunfall incoming? I think I'm fine committing the Overlord. Draw all the cards, make all the tokens. So now if they don't have a sweeper, they might just die. And then plotting Trailblazer versus keeping up some removal. I think we just keep up removal here. And pass. Get lost Elishnorn. Took them a while. And then maybe they're drawing towards a burn spell. Alright, so discard 5. Tap lands can go. Painline can go. Maybe a Not on My Watch. Beza can potentially stabilize them a little bit. Still holding my breath for a Lightning Helix. And it's going to be an Enduring Innocence. Okay. Can potentially exile that. 25 cards remain. So we do have a backup Elishnorn as well. Can draw some more cards. Do have to be careful that we don't draw too many here with all these Trailblazers. But yeah, step 1 probably can just attack with what we have and see what happens. Don't really mind if Trailblazer trades for Beza. Alright, so here we could smite twice. Leave our opponent with nothing. Opponent's at 10, so no need to overextend, just plot some Trailblazers. I don't even think I sack my map tokens here. Just pass. Another Beza. I don't think that's good enough. Still have lethal with our flyers. So unless they just top deck the Lightning Helix, I think we'll get there. And now we can maybe go exploring before attacking to boost up our flyers some more. They did have a Get Lost. Alright, let's go exploring. Keep it on top just to get the +1 counters. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. No green mana means we probably can't keep. Would have been nice with Beanstalk into all the Overlords. This one is maybe a bit ambitious. On the play, I guess we're a little bit less worried about aggro, but still, I'll try it, and then hopefully opponent doesn't go turn 1 mountain. Although if they do, Smite's a nice answer. Turn 1 mountain into Heartfire Hero, so Smite's kind of the perfect answer here. So I wouldn't mind if they play some pump spells. It's going to be a challenger instead. Yeah, this is tough, since Heartfire Hero is maybe long-term the scarier card. Challenger deals more damage in the short term. I think we still exile the Heartfire as weird as that may sound. Just a combination of pump spells with Sellsword can kill us out of nowhere, whereas Challenger we can hope to trade for. And then now, if I plot the Trailblazer and I draw an untapped land, I can cast the Overlord next turn, which seems a lot better. And if we don't draw a land, I may have to consider impending an Overlord, or I can just plot another Trailblazer. But yeah, we're gonna take some damage in the meantime. 5 from Challenger with Banesplitter. If they're playing Banesplitter, they're maybe not on the version with Leyline, since yeah, Banesplitter doesn't synergize with a Leyline. And now we drew Smite, so sadly cannot cast Overlord. What I could do is cast Trailblazer, impend Overlord, and then still have Smite available. Or I could plot another Trailblazer here, which is kind of the same. If I impend Overlord next turn, I'm guaranteed to cast the other one at least. So it's a close call. I think actually just cast the Trailblazer here. That way I can maybe also hit my land drop for turn. Alright, we did. So now I could still impend an Overlord, but then I'm tapped out, which is kind of scary. Although it would allow me to then next turn cast another Overlord, so you know what, let's go for it. This one doesn't draw off Trailblazer since it's not a creature when we cast it with impend. But yeah, I'm more than happy to trade a Trailblazer with a Challenger. Blocking Scamp doesn't feel nearly as good since they likely have a way to pump it up and deal more damage, but they can also kill me if they deal enough damage here, so maybe I'm forced to block the Scamp anyway. With enough prowess, Challenger could also survive, especially with Monstrous Rage, but I guess not losing the game's more important. So for now, another Banesplitter. So we've got at least 3 damage coming our way. Opponent wants to enable Valiant, trades happen, Scam finishes off Trailblazer, but yeah, we're still at 13. And another Overlord. So can't really tap out to cast Overlord, I don't think. Although maybe I do. If they suit a Banesplitter, it's still a trade. I guess I would rather Smite at that point. Alright, fine, we'll impend, keep up Smite. And then next turn I can definitely cast one, but we're also getting close to casting the White Overlord. No blocks, and then I do need to Smite before damage. And our opponent scoops it up, awesome! Exiling Scamp means no damage taken, and yeah, if they don't have any creatures left, they're in trouble. And then the Overlords can close it out pretty quickly. So we get to face a nice variety of matchups here, all the way from aggro to control, and we managed to come out on top, so I'm pretty happy with where this deck ended up. Now if you were to play this in best of 3, you probably need to make a few adjustments, as you don't expect to face quite as many aggro decks, so cards like Elspeth Smites and Not On My Watch are probably not going to be quite as useful there, but you can easily swap those out for other removal spells in white. Maybe you don't need the main deck Pick Your Poison either. And then if you expect to face a lot of Sunfall decks, which at the end of the day are pretty effective against us, since we are trying to generate a lot of board presence and having our creatures exiled doesn't feel great, then maybe a solution is to include a few ways to give our creatures haste. Thinking of the red Recruiter, if we splash a bit of red, then we can potentially give our Overlord haste the same turn we play it and get a nice chunk of damage in, so that can potentially be a way to beat other control decks that rely too much on sorcery speed sweepers. So just something to keep in mind. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.